The engine cut out mid-air. I heard the whine just before it hit. Dr. Alina Vasquez, local physician, crash-landed in my pasture. Her face was covered in blood, her arm twisted. I pulled her from the cockpit myself, called 911, marked the perimeter with my own hands. The FAA declared it a federal crash site, and just as I was helping load her into the ambulance, she showed up, Margaret Thornfield, president of our HOA. She did not ask about the pilot. She did not ask if I was okay. She looked me dead in the eye and handed me a citation. Unauthorized structure, she said, pointing to the wreckage. Not shock, not concern, just paperwork. Like the smoking plane was an illegal shed, I told her. Federal site, under FAA control. An agent even warned her, tampering with a crash investigation is a felony. But Margaret, she smirked. This is about neighborhood standards. She treated my land like her personal kingdom, and that little badge, she wore it like a dictator's medal. That is when I realized this was not about rules. This was not about order. This was about power. That moment, standing beside smoke and steel, watching her write me up as a woman fought for her life, I knew she had no limits, and she had picked the wrong man to provoke. I had spent 20 years in the Air Force dealing with logistics, conflict zones, and chain of command. But nothing prepared me for the war Margaret Thornfield was about to unleash. She thought I would back down, comply, submit. She thought I would bow down. She was dead wrong. My name is Jake Morrison, 20 years in the United States Air Force, Logistics Command. I planned airlifts into war zones with minute-by-minute precision. After retirement, I wanted something simple, a place where I could breathe, think, grow things instead of moving them. So I bought this ranch right outside Willowbrook Estates. It bordered their subdivision, sure, but I figured, quiet neighbors, some shared roads, basic covenants, nothing to worry about. And for a little while, it was fine, until she showed up. Margaret Thornfield, 52 years old, former realtor, current nightmare. She turned that HOA into her own private police state. Weekly violation quotas, random compliance inspections, and she did not come alone. She had eyes everywhere, turned neighbors into informants. If your fence was too tall, your garden too messy, she knew. Her husband Dale, he trailed behind her like a shadow, silent, defeated, like a balloon slowly losing air. I signed those homeowner documents thinking they were just common sense. Keep up your yard, respect your neighbors. Turns out, in Margaret's hands, they were not guidelines. They were weapons, and one by one, the neighborhood fell in line. Fear replaced friendliness. Order replaced freedom. No one. At first, I thought it was just a bad system, but I was wrong. It was not broken. It was working exactly how she wanted it to, wanted to be on Margaret's list. And when that plane went down, she saw wreckage. I saw a warning. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a battleground. And I was not about to lose it. It was a Tuesday morning, clear skies, light breeze. I was fixing a fence line when I heard it. That sound no pilot ever wants to hear. Sputtering, then silence. A small Cessna came over the ridge. Low, too low, wobbling, desperate. She was not going to make the road. My pasture was the only open ground for miles. It hit hard. Wings clipped a fence post, skidded 50 yards. Metal screamed. Dust everywhere. But it held together, barely. I ran, no hesitation. The cabin door was jammed. I could hear her, inside, moaning, trying to stay conscious. Dr. Alina Vasquez, a rural doctor making house calls. Engine failure, no backup, just instinct and training. She crash-landed to save herself, and maybe someone else's mother that day. I called 911, pulled her from the wreckage, bleeding, dazed but alive. I held her hand until the EMTs arrived. Then came the federal agents. FAA taped off everything, measured skid marks, took photos. They called it a controlled emergency landing, standard procedure. But just as they were stabilizing her, I heard another car roll up. That engine, that squeaky door. I knew before I turned. Margaret, clipboard in hand, measuring tape ready, no questions, no concern, just one glance at the wreckage, and she scowled. She walked straight past the ambulance, straight past Dr. Vasquez, and she looked at me with those cold little eyes. Unauthorized structure, she said. Emergency landing, I replied. Violates Section 14B of the HOA Covenant, she snapped, then handed me a citation, while the ground was still warm from the crash, while the stretcher was rolling toward the ambulance. I told her this was a federal investigation. I told her interfering could be a felony. She smirked. That does not concern the HOA. The FAA agent laughed when I told him. Obstruction, he said. That's 5 years. Easy. But Margaret, she was not afraid. She was just getting started. And in that moment, watching her scribble violations beside a broken plane and a bleeding pilot, I knew exactly what this was. Not governance. Not rules. This was a weapon. And she had just pulled the trigger. After the crash, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe Margaret had made her point and would move on. I was wrong. That was only her opening shot. The compliance verification visits started the very next week. 7 in the morning, every morning, knocks on the door, photos snapped from the curb, a tape measure stretched across my fence. The workshop door I painted grey? Wrong shade, $150 fine. The fence I built last year? 6 inches too tall, $200 fine. The gravel in my driveway? Too angular, another fine. She was not just enforcing rules, she was inventing them, one after another. I stopped counting after the 6th citation. Each one felt less like a notice, and more like a threat. But what cut deeper than any fine was what she did to the people around me. Mrs. Chen, the kind old widow next door, used to wave every morning. Now, she pulled her curtains shut when I walked by. Bob Martinez, who helped me put up my barn lights, could not look me in the eye. Neighbors whispered on porches, behind me, around me. He's bringing down property values. He's dangerous. He challenged Margaret. She did not just fine me, she isolated me, and then came the hearing. She called it a board review. I called it what it was, a trap. Scheduled it for Tuesday at 1 p.m., when everyone works. No neighbors, no witnesses, just her and her 2 hand-picked board members, 3 folding chairs, a table stacked with violation slips, and a smile on her face like she had already won. I brought documents, FAA notices, photos, dates. I told her she was interfering with a federal investigation. She scoffed. This board, she said, does not recognize federal authority. Every violation upheld. The fines now totaled $3,200, and just when I thought it could not get more absurd, she pulled out a letter, a lien warning, on my property, over gravel, over paint, over her thirst for control. That was the moment. That was when something inside me switched. This was no longer about rules, no longer about a wrecked plane or a fence post. This was war, and she just drew the battle lines. The lien was not a warning, it was a declaration, and a few mornings later, I caught her. There she was, crouched in my garden at dawn, tape measure in hand, measuring my bell peppers. Bell peppers. When I stepped outside, she did not even flinch. Unauthorized cultivation within 10 feet of the fence, she mumbled, like a robot drunk on power. That was it. My switch flipped, and my training kicked in. In the military, you never go to battle without recon, so I started digging. At night, I would pore over HOA documents, cross-reference violations, stack papers like I was building a case in a courtroom, not a ranch kitchen, and a pattern emerged, one I could not ignore. 87% of all citations in the past year were issued to the same group of people: critics, dissenters, anyone who had ever questioned Margaret. Meanwhile, her property, deck, non-compliant, fountain, illegal plumbing, fence, too tall and too close to the sidewalk, pure hypocrisy, weaponized silence. But I needed more. I needed teeth, and I got them. A buddy of mine, Jagcore, put me in touch with someone at the FAA, Sarah Chen, sharp as a tack and mad as hell when she heard what Margaret had done. "Obstructing a federal investigation," she said. "That's a felony, minimum $25,000 fine, and up to 5 years. Suddenly, this was not just personal, it was federal. And then, the twist I never expected. A knock at the back door, late, almost midnight. It was Dale, Margaret's husband, eyes sunken, shoulders slouched, like they had been holding the weight of her tyranny for years. "She keeps everything," he said, and he handed me a file box. Inside? Gold, target lists, photos of properties, taken from backyards, spreadsheets showing which contractors were preferred and how much they kicked back. One entry stood out. Bradley Lights, $2,800, with a handwritten note beside it, 15% to MT. That was $420, stolen, under the label of enforcement. It was not just pettiness, it was organized corruption, and now I had everything: proof, witnesses, federal interest. She had built a paper fortress, but I had the blueprint to burn it down. Margaret called it an emergency meeting, said it was to address a rogue homeowner. Me. What she did not know, I had done my homework, and I was not coming alone. That night, the room was packed. Neighbors lined the walls. Margaret strutted to the front like a queen with her crown. I walked up calmly, plugged in my laptop, turned on the projector. "Let's look at the facts," I said. Slide 1. 847 violations, 89%, aimed at 12 families, the ones who questioned her. Murmurs broke out, whispers turned to gasps. Slide 2. A letter from the FAA. Obstruction of a federal investigation. Penalty, $25,000. Possible prison time, 2 years. Margaret blinked, frozen. Slide 3. Contractor invoices. Kickback notes in her own handwriting. Tom's $2,800 lights equals $420 to MT. Tom stood up, face red. "You stole from us." Slide 4. Liens filed without board votes. No meeting. No approval. Every lien. Illegal under state law. Jessica Wu shouted, "You made me repaint my mailbox 3 times. The Fosters yelled, "You scared our children." Margaret tried to regain control. "It's all lies," she snapped. And then Dale stood up. "I gave him the documents," he said. "I've watched you destroy this community long enough." The room erupted. Cheers. Applause. Margaret fled. No words. No defense. And just like that, the tyrant's reign was over. ChatGPT said, "Margaret's empire collapsed. Fined by the FAA. Exposed by the State Attorney General. Sued for $180,000. Her real estate license? Revoked. Divorced. Evicted. Banned from HOAs. Willowbrook chose new leadership, me. We built real transparency. And that illegal tomato patch? Now a thriving community garden with a plaque that reads, "Where growth flourishes through respect, not fear." This fence? Still the same height. But now, it's covered in life, thank yous, kids' art. That's the real win. Not just burying a tyrant, but building something stronger. Bullies only rule if you let them. Sometimes the fiercest fights aren't overseas, but right here, for peace, for dignity, for the freedom to just breathe.